I was 17 years old the day my father threw my future in the trash. I still remember walking into the kitchen that afternoon and seeing the torn pieces of the thick envelope scattered across the counter. The Harvard logo was ripped in half, lying next to an empty coffee mug. My father stood there with his arms crossed, like he had just taken out the garbage. When I asked him what he had done, he didn't even flinch. "I did what needed to be done," he said calmly. "You're not going to Harvard, Olivia. That's the end of it." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. For 2 years, I had worked for that letter. Late nights, summer classes, every scholarship essay I could find. And in less than 5 minutes, he had destroyed it. If you have ever had someone you trusted destroy your biggest dream and then act like they were protecting you, drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. I read every single one. My name is Olivia Hayes, and this is the story of how my father threw away my Harvard acceptance letter when I was 17, and how 7 years later, I made sure my niece didn't suffer the same fate. I grew up in a small town in upstate New York called Redford. My father, Michael Hayes, owned a small construction company. He was the kind of man who believed that family meant staying exactly where you were born and doing exactly what he wanted. He had big plans for me. Not college, not success, but staying in Redford and eventually helping run his business. My mother had left when I was 12, so it was just me, my father, and my older sister, Jessica. Jessica had always been the easier daughter. She got married young, had a baby at 22, and stayed in town. My father loved that. It made him feel in control. I was different. I loved studying. I loved the idea of getting out. When I started applying to colleges in my junior year, my father made it very clear he didn't approve. He said college was a waste of money and that girls like me didn't need fancy degrees. But I applied anyway, in secret. Harvard was my reach school. I never actually thought I would get in. But when the thick envelope arrived that spring, I felt like the entire world had opened up for me. For one beautiful day, I allowed myself to believe that I could have a different life. Then my father found the letter. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He simply waited until I left for school and took care of it. When I came home and saw the torn pieces, something inside me went completely still. I asked him why. He looked at me and said the words I will never forget. "Because I'm your father, and I know what's best for this family. You're not leaving me here alone." I begged him to let me reapply the next year. I told him I would work and save money. I even offered to come back every summer. He refused. He said if I tried to leave, I would be choosing myself over my family. That night, I cried so hard I made myself sick. But the next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. For the next 7 years, I stayed in Redford. I worked at the local bank during the day and took online classes at night whenever I could afford them. I helped raise my niece Lily whenever Jessica needed a break. I watched my father smile and act like he had done the right thing. Every single day, I thought about that torn Harvard letter. Every single day, I felt the anger sitting in my chest like a stone. But I never confronted him again. Not until much later. When I turned 24, I finally had enough money saved to leave. I didn't tell my father. I didn't even tell Jessica at first. One night, after everyone had gone to sleep, I packed 2 suitcases, got in my old car, and drove to Boston. I didn't have a job lined up. I didn't have a place to stay. I only had one thing, the burning need to finally start the life that had been taken from me. Those first 2 years in Boston were the hardest of my life. I worked 2 jobs and lived in a tiny apartment with 3 other girls. There were nights I almost gave up and went back home. But every time I thought about turning around, I remembered my father standing in that kitchen with the torn letter in his hands, and I kept going. Slowly, things started to change. I got a job as an administrative assistant at a tech company. My boss noticed I was good with numbers and detail work. Within a year, I was promoted. I started taking proper classes again. For the first time in my life, I felt like I was building something that belonged to me. But the anger never fully went away. Every time I achieved something, I thought about how my father had tried to take it all from me before it even began. I thought about how easily he had decided that my dreams didn't matter. And I promised myself that if I ever got the chance, I would make sure no one else in my family had to go through what I went through. Then, 7 years after I left home, I got a phone call that changed everything. It was my sister, Jessica. Her voice was shaking. "Olivia, it's Lily. She got accepted to a really good school, but Dad is doing the same thing to her that he did to you. He's trying to stop her from going. He's telling her she has to stay and help with the family. Lily is falling apart. I don't know what to do." I sat in silence for a long time after she hung up. 7 years. 7 years of rebuilding everything from nothing. 7 years of carrying what was stolen from me. And now, my father was trying to do it again, this time to my niece. I looked at the clock on my wall. It was almost midnight. I made my decision before the clock hit 12:01. If you have ever had to choose between protecting your own peace and saving someone else from the same pain you survived, then you already know how heavy that choice feels. I didn't sleep that night. After Jessica's call, I sat on my couch in Boston until 3 a.m., staring at the wall. My mind kept replaying the same sentence over and over. He's doing the same thing to her that he did to you. Lily was only 17, the same age I was when my father tore up my Harvard letter, the same age when my entire future was decided for me without my consent. And now he was trying to do it again, this time to my niece. I booked the first flight to New York the next morning. I didn't tell my father I was coming. I didn't even tell Jessica the full plan. I just knew I couldn't sit in Boston and pretend this wasn't happening. If you have ever felt that sudden, heavy responsibility to protect someone from the same pain you once suffered, then you already know how that kind of decision sits in your chest. The flight was only an hour and 20 minutes, but it felt much longer. I kept thinking about Lily. I remembered how quiet and smart she was as a little girl, how she used to ask me about colleges and careers whenever I visited. She was bright, much brighter than I was at her age. And now my father was trying to dim that light the same way he had dimmed mine. When I landed, Jessica was waiting for me at the airport. She looked exhausted. The moment she saw me, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank God you're here." On the drive back to Redford, she told me everything. Lily had gotten accepted to Cornell University with a partial scholarship. It wasn't Harvard, but it was still an excellent school, especially for a girl from our small town. She had worked hard for it. But the moment my father found out, he started his usual routine. He told Lily that college was a waste of money. He said she needed to stay in Redford and help with the family business. He even went as far as telling her that if she left, she would be abandoning the family, just like I did. He made her feel guilty for wanting more. Jessica tried to stand up for Lily, but our father shut her down the same way he always did. He told her she was a bad mother for encouraging Lily to leave. He said real family stays together no matter what. By the time Jessica finished talking, my hands were clenched into fists. I had spent 7 years trying to forget how small and powerless he made me feel. And now he was using the same tactics on my niece. We reached Redford around 4 p.m. I asked Jessica to drop me at a small motel instead of going straight to the house. I needed time to think. I needed to plan how I was going to handle this without making everything worse for Lily. That evening, I called Lily. She sounded small on the phone. When I told her I was in town, she started crying. She said she didn't know what to do anymore. She said Grandpa kept telling her that leaving would destroy the family and that she was being selfish for even considering Cornell. I told her I would come see her the next day. I told her we would figure it out together. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of the motel bed and cried for the first time in years.
Not because I was sad, but because I was angry. Angry that my father was still doing this. Angry that no one had stopped him years ago. Angry that I had stayed silent for so long. The next morning, I went to see Lily. She was waiting for me at Jessica's house. The moment she saw me, she ran into my arms. She was 17, but in that moment, she felt like a little girl again. She kept saying she was scared, scared of disappointing everyone, scared of making the wrong choice. I sat her down and told her something I wished someone had told me at her age. Lily, I said, you are allowed to want more than this town. You are allowed to leave, and you are allowed to build a life that belongs to you, not to your grandfather and not to anyone else.
She looked at me with tears in her eyes. But what if he's right? What if I'm being selfish? I shook my head. Wanting to go to college is not selfish. It's brave. And anyone who tells you otherwise is trying to control you, not protect you. We talked for almost 2 hours. I told her about my own Harvard letter. I told her how our father had torn it up and burned it. I told her how I had spent years feeling guilty for even wanting to leave. She listened quietly, and for the first time, I saw something shift in her eyes, like she finally understood that she wasn't alone in this. But I knew talking to Lily wasn't enough. I had to face my father. That evening, I drove to his house. Jessica tried to stop me, saying it would only make things worse. But I couldn't keep quiet anymore. Not this time. When I walked into the living room, my father was sitting in his usual chair, watching TV. He looked up, surprised to see me. For a moment, he actually smiled. "Olivia," he said, "didn't know you were coming to visit." I didn't smile back. "We need to talk," I said. He turned off the TV and leaned back in his chair, like he was preparing for a fight he had already won many times before. "About what?" he asked, even though he already knew. "About Lily," I said, "and about what you did to me 7 years ago." His face changed. The fake warmth disappeared. "I did what was best for this family," he said, repeating the same line he had used on me years ago. "And I'm doing the same for Lily now. She doesn't need to go running off to some fancy college. She belongs here." I felt something snap inside me. "You don't get to decide that," I said, my voice shaking. "Not for me, and definitely not for her." What happened next surprised even me. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I simply walked over to the chair across from my father and sat down. For the first time in my life, I looked at him without fear or guilt, just clarity. "You burned my Harvard letter," I said quietly. "You didn't just throw it away. You burned it in the backyard like it was garbage. Do you remember that?" My father's jaw tightened. He looked away for a second before answering. "I did what I had to do. You were too young to understand. That school would have changed you. It would have taken you away from your family." I let out a short, bitter laugh. Changed me into what? Someone who actually has a future? Someone who isn't stuck in this town forever, cleaning up everyone else's mess? He leaned forward, his voice getting harder. "You think you're better than us now, Olivia? You left, you abandoned your family, and now you come back here after 7 years and think you can tell me how to raise my granddaughter?" I felt the old anger rising, but this time I didn't swallow it. "I didn't abandon anyone," I said. "You made it impossible for me to stay. You took away my only chance at a real education. You made me feel guilty for wanting more than this town. And now you're doing the exact same thing to Lily." At the mention of Lily's name, something shifted in his face. He looked almost defensive. "Lily is different. She's young. She needs guidance. She doesn't know what's best for her yet. She's 17, the same age I was when you destroyed my letter. And you're doing it again. You're scaring her into staying. You're making her feel like wanting to go to college is selfish, just like you did to me." My father stood up suddenly. He started pacing the living room, the way he always did when he was losing control of a situation. This family has rules, he said. We take care of each other. We don't run off to big cities and forget where we came from. Your sister understood that. She stayed, she had Lily, she helped me when I needed it. I stood up too. And look where that got her, I said. Jessica is exhausted. She's raising a daughter alone because her husband left. She's working 2 jobs. And now you're trying to trap Lily in the same cycle? He stopped pacing and turned to face me. His eyes were cold. You think you're some kind of hero because you ran away to Boston? He asked. You think leaving made you strong? You left your family behind. You left me alone. And now you want to take my granddaughter away too? For a moment, I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered the torn pieces of that Harvard letter on the kitchen counter. I remembered how he had looked at me that day, not with love, but with ownership. I'm not trying to take Lily away from you, I said. I'm trying to give her what you took from me. A choice, a real future, something that belongs to her, not to you. My father's face turned red. He pointed a finger at me. You were always selfish, Olivia. Even as a kid, always thinking you were too good for this family. I should have known you would turn out like this. Those words used to destroy me, but not anymore. I took a step closer to him. You can call me selfish all you want, I said, but I will not stand by and watch you do to Lily what you did to me. She is going to Cornell, and if you try to stop her, I will fight you every step of the way. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he let out a short, angry laugh. You think you can fight me? He said. I'm her grandfather. I have rights. And I'm not going to let some spoiled girl who ran away 7 years ago come in here and destroy everything I've built. I felt something settle inside me. A quiet, cold kind of certainty. You don't have rights over her future, I said. And if you keep trying to control her the way you controlled me, you're going to lose her. Just like you lost me. For the first time, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not anger. Something closer to fear. He didn't say anything else. He just turned around and walked out of the living room, slamming the door behind him. I stood there alone, my heart pounding. I had finally said the things I had been holding in for 7 years. But instead of feeling relieved, I felt something else. Something heavier. Because I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The house felt different after that confrontation. I stood alone in the living room for a long time, listening to the sound of my father's truck pulling out of the driveway. He didn't say where he was going. He didn't even look at me when he left. The silence he left behind was heavy, like the calm before a storm. I knew my father well enough to understand that he wasn't the type to back down quietly. He had always been someone who fought to keep control, especially when he felt it slipping. And right now, he was losing it. First with me, and now with Lily. If you have ever stood up to someone who controlled your life for years, you know that the moment of confrontation is rarely the end of the story. It's usually just the beginning of something much harder. I stayed at Jessica's house that night. Lily didn't come out of her room for hours. When she finally did, her eyes were red and swollen. She sat beside me on the couch without saying anything at first. Then she asked the question I had been dreading. Did Grandpa get really mad at you because of me? I looked at her and shook my head. No, Lily. He got mad because I finally stopped letting him control me, and because I'm not going to let him do the same thing to you. She was quiet for a moment before speaking again. He told me this morning that if I go to Cornell, I'll regret it for the rest of my life. He said I'll end up alone, just like you. Those words hit me harder than I expected. Not because they were true, but because my father was using me as a warning. He was painting my independence as a failure. I turned to face Lily properly.
Listen to me, I said gently. I am not alone. And even if I was, being alone is still better than staying somewhere that slowly kills your dreams. You are not selfish for wanting to go to college. You are not selfish for wanting a different life than the one Grandpa wants for you. Lily looked down at her hands. But what if he's right? What if I go and I fail? What if I disappoint everyone? I took her hand in mine. Then you fail, and you learn, and you try again. That's how life works, Lily. But you deserve the chance to try. You deserve the chance to see what you're capable of outside of this town. She didn't say anything after that, but she leaned her head against my shoulder and stayed there for a long time. In that moment, I felt something shift between us. It wasn't just about protecting her anymore. It was about giving her what I never had, someone who believed she deserved more. The next morning, my father came back. He didn't come inside. He just stood in the driveway and called Jessica out. I watched from the window as they talked. Jessica looked tense, and my father kept gesturing with his hands, the way he always did when he was trying to convince someone of something. When Jessica came back inside, her face was pale. He wants to talk to Lily, alone. I felt my stomach tighten. And what did you tell him? Jessica looked at me helplessly. I told him I'd ask her, but Olivia, you know how he is. If we keep saying no, he's going to make this even harder for everyone. I understood what she was saying. My father had a way of making life difficult for people who went against him. He could be cold, distant, and manipulative when he didn't get his way. Jessica had to live in the same town as him. She couldn't just pack up and leave like I had. But I also knew that giving in now would only make things worse for Lily in the long run. I looked at Jessica and said, "Then we don't let him talk to her alone. Not until we figure out how to handle this properly." Jessica nodded, but I could see the fear in her eyes. She was caught between her father and her daughter, and she didn't know how to choose without losing someone. That evening, my father called the house phone. When Jessica answered, he didn't ask to speak to Lily. Instead, he asked to speak to me. I took the phone and stepped outside onto the back porch. "What do you want?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. His tone was calm, almost pleasant. That scared me more than when he was angry. "I want to talk to you, Olivia, not as your father, as someone who's worried about this family falling apart." I stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. "You think you're helping Lily by pushing her to leave," he said, "but you're not. You're filling her head with ideas that are going to hurt her. Cornell is expensive. She doesn't have the money. And even if she did, she's not ready for that kind of world." "She's ready," I said. "She's more ready than I was at her age." My father let out a short laugh. "You were never ready. That's why I stopped you. And I'm going to stop her too if I have to. Because unlike you, I actually care about what happens to this family." His words were meant to hurt. And they did. But I didn't let him hear it in my voice. "You can try," I said quietly. "But this time, you're not dealing with a scared 17-year-old girl. You're dealing with me. And I'm not backing down." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then my father spoke again, and this time his voice was cold. "You're making a mistake, Olivia. And when everything falls apart, don't say I didn't warn you." He hung up before I could reply. I stood on the porch for a long time after that, the phone still in my hand. The night air was cold, but I barely felt it. My mind was racing. I knew my father. When he felt like he was losing control, he didn't just accept it. He fought back. And he fought dirty. I had a feeling that whatever he was planning next, it was going to be worse than anything he had done so far. And I was right. The next morning, everything felt off. I woke up early at Jessica's house, but the usual sounds of the house were missing. Lily wasn't in the kitchen making coffee like she sometimes did. Jessica was on the phone in her bedroom, speaking in a low, tense voice. When she came out, her face looked pale. "Dad called Lily last night," she said quietly, "after you went to sleep." I felt my stomach drop. What did he say to her? Jessica sat down at the kitchen table and rubbed her forehead. "He told her that you're trying to turn her against the family. He said you're filling her head with selfish ideas because you're bitter about your own life. He also told her that if she goes to Cornell, he'll stop helping with anything, including the little money he sometimes gives for her school expenses." I closed my eyes for a second. This was exactly what I was afraid of. My father wasn't just trying to control Lily emotionally anymore. He was now using money and guilt as weapons. "Did Lily say anything back to him?" I asked. Jessica shook her head. She just listened. But this morning she's been quiet. She hasn't come out of her room yet. I stood up. I need to talk to her. When I knocked on Lily's door, she opened it slowly. Her eyes were red, like she hadn't slept well. She let me in without saying much and sat on the edge of her bed. "Grandpa called me last night," she said before I could even ask. "He told me you're trying to break the family apart. He said you're using me to get back at him for what happened with your college letter." I sat down beside her. "And what do you think?" I asked gently. Lily was quiet for a few seconds. Then she looked at me. "I don't know what to think anymore," she admitted. "Part of me knows he's trying to control me, but another part of me feels guilty. What if he's right? What if going to Cornell really does hurt everyone?" I took a deep breath. This was the moment I had to be very careful. If I pushed too hard, she might shut down. If I stayed too quiet, my father would win. "Lily," I said, "I'm not going to lie to you. Your grandfather is scared of losing control. That's why he's saying these things. But wanting to go to college doesn't make you selfish. It makes you normal. And the fact that he's threatening to take away support if you go, that's not love. That's control." She looked down at her hands. "He said if I leave, I'll regret it forever, just like you did." Those words stung, but I didn't let it show. "I don't regret leaving," I told her honestly. "I regret staying silent for so long. I regret letting him decide my future without fighting back. That's what I regret." Lily was quiet again. Then she asked something that broke my heart a little. "If I go to Cornell, will you still be there for me, even if Grandpa gets really angry?" I looked her straight in the eyes. "I will always be there for you, Lily, no matter what he says or does. You're not alone in this." She nodded slowly, but I could still see the fear in her eyes. My father had spent years making her believe that leaving meant betraying the family. Undoing that damage wasn't going to happen in one conversation. Later that day, while Lily was in her room, Jessica pulled me aside. "Olivia, I'm scared," she admitted. "Dad has been talking to some of our relatives. He's telling them that you're trying to take Lily away and that you're poisoning her against the family. Aunt Carol already called me this morning asking what's going on." I wasn't surprised. This was classic behavior from him. When he couldn't control someone directly, he would turn the rest of the family against them. "What do you want me to do?" I asked Jessica. She looked tired. "I don't know. Part of me wants you to stay and help, but another part of me is scared that if you keep pushing, Dad is going to make life hell for all of us." I understood her fear. She had to live here. I didn't. But I also knew that if we backed down now, Lily would end up exactly where I had been 7 years ago, trapped. That evening, Something happened that proved my father wasn't done fighting. Lily's phone rang while we were having dinner. She looked at the screen and froze. "It's Grandpa," she said. Jessica and I exchanged a look. "Answer it," I told her gently, "but put it on speaker." Lily hesitated, then answered and put the phone on speaker. "Hello?" she said, her voice small. My father's voice came through clearly. "Lily, I need you to come over to the house tomorrow morning. We need to talk, just you and me, no one else." Lily looked at me and Jessica nervously. I don't know, Grandpa," she said. There was a short pause on the other end. "Lily," he said, his voice softer now, almost gentle. "I'm your grandfather. I've been there for you since the day you were born. Don't let your aunt fill your head with nonsense. Come see me tomorrow. We'll figure this out together, like family." Lily didn't answer right away. She looked at me, clearly torn. Before she could say anything, I spoke up. "Dad," I said clearly, "she's not coming alone." There was silence on the other end of the line. Then my father's voice turned cold. "I see you're still there, Olivia, still trying to control everything." "I'm not controlling anything," I replied. "I'm making sure Lily isn't manipulated the way I was." He let out a short, bitter laugh. "Huh, you think you're so smart, but you have no idea what you're doing. If Lily goes to that school, she's going to need money. And I can promise you one thing. She won't be getting a single cent from me. Not for tuition, not for books, not for anything." Lily's face went pale. I felt something shift inside me. This was no longer just emotional manipulation. He was now using money as a weapon against his own granddaughter. I looked at Lily and spoke clearly into the phone. "That's fine," I said, "because if you won't support her, I will." The words came out before I could stop them. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then my father's voice turned cold. "You're going to regret this, Olivia. All of you." He hung up. Lily was staring at me with wide eyes. You would really help me pay for college?" she asked quietly. I looked at her and nodded. "If that's what it takes to make sure you get the chance I never had, then yes, I will." Jessica was looking at me like she couldn't believe what I had just said, but I didn't regret it. Because in that moment, I realized something important. This wasn't just about fighting my father anymore. This was about finally giving back what was stolen from me, through Lily. And I was willing to do whatever it took, even if it meant going to war with my own father. The phone call with my father left a heavy silence in the room. Lily was still staring at me, her eyes wide. Jessica looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. I could feel the weight of what I had just promised, that I would help pay for Lily's college if my father refused to support her. I didn't regret saying it, but I also knew that offering financial help was only one part of the battle. The bigger fight was still ahead of us. If you have ever stood up to someone who has controlled your family for years, you know that things usually get worse before they get better. Over the next few days, my father went quiet. Too quiet. He stopped calling Lily. He stopped showing up at Jessica's house. At first, I thought maybe he was finally backing off. But I knew him better than that. This silence wasn't surrender. It was strategy. Then the messages started coming. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years began texting Jessica. Aunt Carol, Uncle Robert, even some cousins. They were asking the same questions. Was it true that I was trying to take Lily away? Was I really trying to destroy the family? My father had clearly been busy spreading his version of the story. Jessica showed me the messages one evening while Lily was in her room. "I don't know what to tell them," she said, looking exhausted. If I defend you, they'll turn on me too. If I stay quiet, it looks like I agree with Dad. I understood her position. She had to live in this town. She had to deal with these people every day. I didn't. You don't have to fight my battles, I told her. Just focus on Lily. I'll handle the rest. But deep down, I knew this was affecting her. My father was slowly turning the family against us, and Jessica was caught in the middle. Then came the worst blow. 3 days after the phone call, Lily came home from school looking pale. She sat at the kitchen table and didn't say anything for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was small. Grandpa went to my school today. Jessica and I both froze. What do you mean he went to your school? Jessica asked. Lily looked down at the table. He talked to my guidance counselor. He told her that our family is going through some issues and that I shouldn't be encouraged to apply to colleges far away. He said he's worried about my mental health. I felt anger rise in my chest so fast it made my hand shake. My father had crossed another line. He was now involving Lily's school to pressure her. Jessica stood up so fast her chair scraped against the floor. What did he do? Lily nodded, tears forming in her eyes. Mrs. Ramirez called me into her office after school. She asked me if everything was okay at home. She said Grandpa seemed very concerned about me. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. This had gone too far. That night, I made a decision. I called my father. He answered on the second ring, like he had been waiting for my call. I heard you went to Lily's school, I said, skipping any greeting. There was a short pause before he answered. I did what any concerned grandfather would do, he said calmly. I'm looking out for her well-being. No, I replied. You're trying to control her. You're trying to scare her into staying here. And now you're dragging her school into it. This stops now. My father's voice turned cold. You think you can come back after 7 years and start making rules? This is my family, Olivia, not yours. Lily is my granddaughter, and I will do whatever I think is necessary to keep her here. I gripped the phone tighter. If you keep interfering with her education and her future, I will take legal steps, I said. I will make sure you can't keep doing this to her. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You think a piece of paper from some lawyer is going to stop me from protecting my family? Go ahead, try it. See how far you get. He hung up. I sat in the dark living room for a long time after that call, thinking about what to do next. The next morning, I sat down with Jessica and Lily. I told them everything about the threats, about the school visit, and about what I was willing to do to protect Lily's future. Lily was quiet for a long time. Then she looked at both of us and said something that surprised me. I don't want to fight with Grandpa, she said, but I also don't want to stay here my whole life just because he's scared of being alone. Those words gave me hope. Over the next 2 weeks, things moved fast. I contacted a family lawyer in New York and explained the situation. She told me that while grandparents don't automatically have rights to force a child to stay in a certain state for college, my father's behavior, going to the school, pressuring Lily, turning family against us, could be documented if things escalated. I also started looking into financial aid and scholarships for Lily. I told her that even if my father refused to help, we would find a way to make Cornell happen. Slowly, Lily started to regain some confidence. She began filling out her enrollment paperwork. She even started talking about what dorm she might want and what classes she was interested in. But my father wasn't done. One evening, he showed up at Jessica's house unannounced. Jessica opened the door, and he walked straight into the living room where Lily and I were sitting. He looked at Lily and said, "Pack your things. You're coming to stay with me for a while." Lily froze. I stood up. "She's not going anywhere with you." My father ignored me and kept looking at Lily. "This is between me and my granddaughter," he said. "You've done enough damage, Olivia." Lily looked between us, clearly terrified. I stepped in front of her. "She's not going with you." I repeated, "Not tonight, not ever, unless she wants to." My father finally looked at me. His eyes were cold. "You're going to regret this," he said quietly. "All of you." Then he turned around and walked out. That night, Lily cried in my arms for almost an hour. She kept saying she didn't want to hurt anyone, but she also didn't want to lose her chance at college. I held her and told her the same thing I wished someone had told me years ago. You're allowed to choose your own future, even if it disappoints the people who raised you. 2 days later, Lily made her decision. She told my father, through Jessica, that she was going to Cornell. She also told him that if he continued to pressure her or involve other family members, she would limit contact with him. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It was quiet, but it was final. My father didn't call, he didn't show up, he simply went silent again. A month later, Lily left for Cornell. I drove her to the airport with Jessica. Before she went through security, she hugged me tightly and whispered, "Thank you for fighting for me." I didn't cry until after she left. That night, as I sat alone in Jessica's living room, I thought about everything that had happened over the past 7 years, and especially the past few months. I thought about the torn Harvard letter. I thought about the years I spent feeling small and trapped. I thought about how easily my father had decided that my dreams didn't matter. And then I thought about Lily, sitting on a plane, heading toward her own future. For the first time in a very long time, the anger in my chest felt a little lighter. I had finally given back what was stolen from me, not to myself, but to the next generation. And that, I realized, was its own kind of justice. If you have ever had to choose between keeping the peace with your family and protecting someone you love, then you already know how painful that choice can be. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to let the cycle continue. Lily deserved the chance I never got, and I would do it all over again if I had to. If stories like this resonate with you, hit that like button and subscribe to Polite Revenge for more family drama stories. Drop your city in the comments and tell me, have you ever had to stand up to your own family to protect someone else? I read every single one. You know, looking back at everything, I've come to understand something important. Sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who try hardest to keep you small. They do it out of fear, out of control, or because they never got the chance to dream themselves. But their fear is not your responsibility. Protecting the next generation sometimes means disappointing the generation before you. It's not easy, it's not always clean, but it's necessary because the cycle only breaks when someone finally decides to stop passing it on. I'm glad I became that someone for Lily.